around 40 people. So maybe the rest may not be interested, but this is difficult. I cannot allow anymore. Okay. So I was actually converting that Excel sheet into a doc file for taking my attendance, and that's why I found out some mistakes were there at the last moment. So today we will start discussing on the subject issue, because in the last class we tried to make an overview of the different aspects of energy conservation and what do you expect it from this course, as it is not a conventional classical subject, it's an emerging one. So obviously the content will change and the interactive mode is very much welcome. And the what is the objective of from this particular course, we are specifically looking towards understanding the energy conservation issue and as far as possible implementing with a very critical open mind as you join in industry. And in industry this opportunity of energy conservation is enormous, but sometimes this does not depend on how much technological knowledge you have. Better, the innovative mind will be more important for making actual solutions, but undoubtedly this must be supported by the so-called domain knowledge. I mean, specifically to a subject field area, like whether it is metallurgy or chemical or mechanical. But in addition to that, small innovative ideas sometimes makes an opportunity of big energy conservation or other better, more energy savings. And undoubtedly, this, I mean, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency will discuss those issues also. They have made a lot of awarding and this sort of PAT scheme, that means performance achievement trade, and there was a better support for those organizations, industrial units, who have made it a good example of energy conservation, and those who could fail, they have also been punished, and in the form of certificate payment and the rewarding. There is a competitive approach in Indian energy conservation industrial approach too. Anyway, so those things I will come later. Today formally what I will do, I will start into the as such how the energy is defined in energy conservation, because energy as you have studied till date is basically defined with respect to different types of energies, as you know from your school days, mechanical energy, chemical energy, etc., etc. But when it comes to the energy conservation, the definitions of energy itself get a little bit modified from the perspectives of real life aspect. What do I mean? I mean that the when you come into the energy conservation, why it is needed at all? It's not that for the pure science teaching or pure science learning energy conservation is required. It's completely from the practical need of why the energy conservation is required is from two aspects. One is obviously if you can save the natural limited resources, and simultaneously you can make it profitable from the commercial viewpoint, because less energy conservation with the same product output or service output means you are consuming less energy, means your cost is also less. So it's a win-win situation. If you can do innovative energy conservation applications or principles, then obviously it saves money, and simultaneously it saves the that means saves money is an individual benefit or a company's benefit, individual company's benefit. But on the other hand, you are consuming less natural resources if they are specifically non-renewable fossil fuel based systems which has got a limited resource, then you are contributing to the global benefit. So it's a at different levels there, both levels, at the individual entity level or at the global level, the energy conservation provides an incentive. Anyway, from that perspective, what we are going to start with discussion today is how the energy conservation, in the energy conservation subject, the energy itself is defined. Let's see. Just let me share the screen now, and no one else will be possible to enter, allow to enter now. Anyway, any one of you, please just give a knock or rather sound that you are being visible this slide.
Yes, sir.
It is being visible. Fine. Just then let me slide show. It's taking some time. In slideshow, what is the key? I forgot it. F6 or anyway. Let me do it in this way. So I can start discussing. Let it take its time. So in this today's class, actually, I will try to explain the general overview and the types of energy as defined in the subject of energy conservation. Uh, it is not coming to the next slide. Just wait. Yeah, and then slideshow it should go. Okay, if it doesn't go, let me know. It's not taking. Let me click. Okay, let it do its your things. Rather, let it do its own things, and we can go on discussing. Then maybe the next slide will come a little bit later. What is the idea in energy conservation of defining the types of energy is not from the pure scientific viewpoint, but there are two, three issues as I have discussed. The one issue is with respect to natural resource conservation. Another aspect is with respect to cost. Another issue is obviously with respect to the environmental impact. Means, if we look into the energy conservation perspective, it must have some rather good provisions of providing lesser environmental impact, number one. Number two, it must be cost effective or low cost solution, or rather, it must provide the so called, just it's coming now. Yeah. Okay. So low cost solution, and then obviously it must have to have some natural resource conservation. From that viewpoint, the first way of definitions means how we classify that also depends on what is our objective. So depending on the first objective of the environmental impact and also on cost issue also to some extent connected to this, the first way of defining the entire classes of energy that is used in industry is defined as primary energy and secondary energy, or they are alternately sometimes the resources are loosely taken as the form of energy. Do you have any idea what is primary energy and secondary energy? It's not the definition we had in science. Any response from the class? What do you mean by primary energy and what do you mean by secondary energy? No response now. Okay. So then let's see. I mean, some of the energies. I will give a note also. Be ready with your, I mean, so-called exercise book and pen, etc. Because I think that I need to give you the note. Otherwise, it will be rather during examination, as there is no books, it will be difficult. So the primary energy, just write down. Primary energy within bracket. You write down the resources. Primary energy or resources is the form of energy, is the form of energy within bracket or resource that is naturally available, that is naturally available.
Sir, repeat one more.
রিপিট কোত্থেকে রিপিট, সেটা হলে তো খুব প্রবলেম হয়ে যায়। আমি
Sir,
মুখস্থ করে কিছু বলি না খাতা থেকে, আমার তো মন থেকে বলতে হয়। কোন জায়গাটায় তোমার শেষ হয়েছে বলো?
so primary energy is a form of energy.
হ্যাঁ, প্রাইমারি এনার্জি ইজ, তুমি এতটা শুনতে পারোনি? তোমাকে নেটওয়ার্কের প্রবলেম হয়েছিল?
না স্যার, নোটটা লিখতে পারবো।
না না, এগুলো একটু কোঅপারেট করতে হবে অনলাইন ক্লাসে, এইসব ডিফিকাল্টিস গুলো একটু ম্যানেজ করার চেষ্টা করতে হবে আর কি। প্রাইমারি এনার্জি ইজ এ ফর্ম অফ এনার্জি দ্যাট ইজ ন্যাচারালি অ্যাভেলেবল in local environment and is useful without any need of conversion. Without any need of conversion. Conversion. So what is the definition we are giving here? We are giving that the primary energy, if it is useful, rather some form of energy, if it is useful and directly available in nature, is called a primary energy. Now, can you give me an example of primary energy from this definition? Obviously, in the definitions, loosely the resources are also included. That means that may not be in energy form, but the energy resource is also included in that form. So give me an example of a primary energy. Just common sense. That's naturally available in local environment, and that's useful form of energy.
Wood.
No idea.
Said wood or
Wood.
any other.
Undoubtedly, wood is a form of primary energy because it's a resource. Honestly speaking, or rather, truly, strictly speaking, better to say, it's not an energy. It's some sort of matter or object. But still, the wood is loosely taken as a resource. That's the primary energy. The
So
coal,
sunlight.
sunlight is absolutely good example. Why I'm telling? Because in sunlight, we tacitly assume that sunlight is available, but you know that the light in during evening or night, we can have the distinct feeling of how much energy conversion, not conservation, conversion process has to be there. Because what you do in the, right now, we are having artificial light. Means what? We are doing getting it through electricity. Electricity is rather in our area is completely converted from coal. That means there is a distinct energy conversion chain from the primary energy coal, rather primary energy resource coal, to electricity. Then electricity is finally getting converted into light. Interestingly, at daylight, there is no necessity of this artificial light in open space. Absolutely no necessity. And that means the sunlight provides the so-called energy supply or other energy services. These are all generally termed as energy services. Energy services means those services which are useful for the human being in different forms. It can be in the form of light, it can form the cooling, it can form in the heating, it can be in the form of say some fans. That means that you are creating the airflow. So it can be in the form of say entertainment of devices like television, radio, whatever it may be. So it can be different energy services where some energy is consumed. Now the sunlight example is very important because that's an example of a primary energy which we every day consume or enjoy without very conscious mind. But not only the light part, but also after washing our clothes, we put it in the sun. That's basically some form of heating. So obviously that's another requirement because I know, because I had to stay a long time for in Sweden, and that time I know that the drying in winter is a itself high amount of centrifuging and then little bit heating and then putting into just into open air. These are the requirement for the drying process. We being in tropical country, especially during summer and winter, we don't rather give that much weightage to that particular direct sunlight for drying purpose. So all these are some sort of energy services. So obviously just we can write down. That means from that example, say another just tricky issue I'm putting into. So the wind energy, what is the significance of wind energy? Wind energy, if you just take it, say, to all of you know that the boats just sail using their hulls, যেটাকে বাংলায় পাল বলে. So obviously in that case we are using that flow of wind, that the energy of wind, that means kinetic energy of wind, for the movement of those boats. And this is undoubtedly an example of a primary energy. But whenever you are talking about the wind energy getting converted into wind through the wind turbine into electricity, then obviously we are converting the primary energy into a secondary energy of electricity. I'm coming to that secondary energy example. But the primary energy concept you have understood, that is naturally available and your useful form. And loosely, as I have mentioned, that it can be energy by definition as per science, it can be energy resource also. So just write down examples of primary energy. Examples of primary energy may be any useful renewable resources, any useful renewable resources. As you know that the renewable resources happen naturally in the nature. Any useful renewable resources, say sunlight, wind energy, river flow, geothermal, etc. Because we can go on giving some more examples like biomass, etc. Anyway, etc. Comma, fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas, etc. So again, I'm reminding you people that in the examples we have given both energy and some matter, because energy examples, whenever you are talking about sunlight, it's a form of energy. Whenever you are talking about the wind energy, it's a form of energy. We are not meaning the wind itself, the kinetic energy part of the wind. We want to mean in the definition of primary energy. But on the other hand, whenever we are mentioning that the coal being a primary energy, then coal is not an energy, it's an energy resource. So obviously, in the definition of energy conservation, I can tell you when you come to the industry, then these are very loosely overlapping. Means energy resources and actual energy, as per definitions of the science, both are considered as the primary energy resource or secondary energy resource. Anyway, so automatically the secondary energy definitions we have to give. Just write down secondary. Can you give a response? Obviously that this is now clear, very clear. I mean, there should not be any confusion. So that's not naturally happening, and then you have to get it converted. Means what is naturally happening, you can use it directly, but if you need to use it in another form, then there must be some energy conversion device which will convert this primary energy form or resource into its secondary useful form. Then obviously in any conversion, energy conversion process, automatically you can understand, I will give the text later, that automatically you can understand that the secondary energies will be costlier because the involved process of conversion will be there. For example, in power plant, coal is much cheaper, but electricity is not that cheap. Electricity involves the cost addition during the conversion of coal to electricity, because obviously that process of entire equipment investment, operational investment, etc., etc., in addition to the coal cost involved with the coal supply and the other fuel supply, the entire cost is being added up into the commercial system of the industrial electricity supply. So naturally, electricity per unit price is much higher than the energy associated of per unit energy associated with coal. So these are the so-called energy upgrading, or the quality of energy definitions comes into the picture. So there are those who have studied the thermodynamics in detail. They know that the little bit about from second law concept, we have the so-called Dogard high grade. These are the one way of analyzing the systems in a more scientific approach. But commercially in energy conservation, which is more related to the commercial applications, the people have more concentrated with the cost estimation. I'll come to that part later on. Anyway, so just write down secondary energy within bracket or resources are those forms, are those FORMS, are those forms which are useful but not available in nature. Full stop. So any secondary energy, so any secondary energy has to be supplied through THROUGH, through its conversion from a primary energy, within bracket or resource. For example, next sentence. For example, electricity, heating, 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 etc. are examples of secondary energy. Next sentence. Obviously, market price of secondary energy is always higher than available primary energies. As the cost involvement for energy conservation, energy conversion, the cost involvement for energy conversion, conversion, and associated efficiency of conversion causes secondary energy unit price to be higher than its source primary energy. For example, both heat energy and electricity, both heat energy and electricity are costlier than its fuel resource, its fuel resource, and the cost also depends on associated conversion technology and commercial issues other commercial issues. So why do I mention these commercial issues? Because sometimes you know that the additionally imposed cess etc causes some additional cost. Interestingly, you know that these are now all becoming interrelated or connected. For example, previously power from coal was associated with the coal price available. Now, like cigarette is available in market, but there is a statutory warning that it causes some health hazards, including cancer. So, any people can still consume rather than smoke in spite of statutory warning from the government. Similarly, coal internationally is being considered as far as possible non acceptable fuel just because it adds greenhouse gas, mostly CO2, to the atmosphere, causing climate change problem. But in international negotiation, you can never make the coal use completely stopped right at this moment. So in some of the countries, to motivate, because if you want to motivate the industry to a particular direction, you have to provide some financial incentives. And in fact, I don't know whether you are aware, in India also we have added some environmental cess on the used coal. That means whatever was the costing associated with coal extraction and then transportation. In addition to that, there is a cess assigned on coal, which is not there for a cleaner fuel like biomass. Rather, there is a subsidy, just reuse. So this additional associated commercial price induced from the regulatory authority or administration, that makes a difference in the actual price of the secondary energy. So at least you can understood that the primary energy and secondary energy concept is not at all related to the so-called science, pure science issue. It's completely related to the its cost, conversion technology, availability, usefulness from these viewpoints. And we have understood that the primary energy, if it is usable form, or rather if it is useful, then obviously always better, because that is always available in nature. Directly you can consume it for your own purpose, and cheaper also. But secondary energy is undoubtedly required in some of the applications, and that's why we have to convert it from primary energy resources. And obviously the secondary energies will be costlier. How much costlier, that will depend on your energy conversion chain and the process involved. So, and after understanding this classification, then I'm coming to commercial, renewable, all this also. But initially, after discussing the primary energy and the secondary energy definition, now my question is, which is the most useful form of secondary energy? Any response from the class? So now you know what is secondary energy. Now you respond, what is the most useful form of secondary energy?
Electricity, sir.
Undoubtedly. Can you tell me why electricity has emerged as the most useful form of primary secondary energy? There is no electrical engineering student, but it's a common sense issue.
That it can be converted
Huh?
easily and also transferred easily.
Let me,
Transferred and converted to other forms of energy easily.
yes, let me increase my sound. Okay. Huh. It can be actually, you are right. I mean, there are some advantages which is very much inherent in the electricity form of energy. One is, that the electricity mostly still till date is used in the centralized mode of generation and supply. Why? Because why this name is there, because we generate electricity concentrated in the power plants in some of the places, and then it is distributed over some a large radius of some hundreds of kilometers. Interestingly, in that case, what is the idea? Where the electricity will be actually generated, at the end of the generator, that electricity has to be transferred over some hundreds of kilometers at a distance. In between it can be, but over some 100 kilometers, so that it can be utilized at several hundred kilometers distance. Now, heat energy, if you think about, it can never be used. And moreover, as the electricity is most versatile form of secondary energy, the devices what we use currently has completely been developed over a long period towards human living standard improvement. And then obviously it was, I mean, how the technology proceeds depend on, as it becomes useful for the human being, automatically we give more importance to that. And initially electricity, when it was realized, all of you know, and history of science and technology is very interesting, though there is no course in our engineering. But I am very much attracted to reading the history of science and technology, because this gives an idea of how the people were motivated to, develop the next issues. next inventions. Anyway, so if we just come to the point of the electricity, why it become finally most useful, just write down a little bit because I can go on talking, but it will take unnecessary time. So electricity is the most useful form of secondary energy. Electricity is the most useful form of secondary energy. Full stop. It is because it is because it can be transmitted over a long distance without much significant losses. Without much significant losses. Full stop. Moreover, modern life appliances are developed over the years which run with electricity as input. Full stop. Though electricity is the most useful secondary energy, next sentence, though electricity is the most useful secondary energy, the conversion process from fuel to electricity is still a costly one and it has severe environmental effect if produced from fossil fuels within bracket specifically coal. So always the engineers go through some contradictory facts. We have to have the secondary form of energy, no doubt, and the electricity has emerged as the most useful form of secondary energy. But interestingly, the secondary energy form of electricity originally that was identified due to two main advantage, that the transmission of the energy from can be done over long distance with insignificant loss. That means very small amount of loss. This has added up some advantage, and on the basis of that, the devices has also been developed over many years. But on the other hand, we know that this conversion of electricity from the fossil fuel based systems has caused problems over several years, and that has caused to the largest threat of human survival, that's the climate change. So this is the interesting story of that particular, how the multi-dimensional aspect of choosing different options in life come into the picture, and we go on correcting ourselves. Anyway, so we have understood what is primary energy, we have understood what is the philosophy of primary energy, secondary energy classification, and loosely resources are also included as the definitions of primary and secondary energy. And why the use of secondary energy, electricity, has emerged, and what is the associated difficulties with that also we have understood. And in fact, we will have some flavor of the electricity transmission process involving the grid. Not, I will not go, I generally do not go into in this open elective classes much more into technological in depth, but the overall purview has to be there so that you can understand from the energy conservation viewpoint what are the issues that must be addressed. All you may not be able, it's a mixed group from different discipline, so the domain knowledge is very much needed. But last year electrical engineering students were also there. I could discuss with those people a little bit in depth, but here the ideas of the energy conservation points will be discussed, but not into the actual technology intervention. Now I'm going to the second definition, commercial energy and non-commercial energy. What is your feedback? This is also not a definition as per science. It's purely on the basis, definition is on the basis of commercial aspect of the energy. Any response from the class? From the name itself, it's quite obvious. What should be the definition of commercial energy? Any response? No response.
Secondary energy is
Second, no, primary, secondary. That whenever you go for any classification, the way of classification itself can be different, and based on that way of classification, we can classify into different categories of any particular entity. For example, whenever we are defining the different types of energy, one of the ways of defining the energy is whether it is in naturally available in nature or it has to be converted from some natural resources. On the basis of that, definition is met, primary and secondary energy. But now we are entering into another form of energy definitions, which is practically very much relevant from the viewpoint of the use of that particular form of energy, which is the commercial and non-commercial energy. Any person or any student rather who want to respond. It may be wrong, but please be in interactive and thinking very openly. Anyway, I'm giving one example. Say you have a car. Obviously, if you want to have your car without any petrol or other diesel on which it runs, is it useful to buy a car at all? No. That means whenever you want to go for the car purchase, then obviously you have to be assured that the so-called supply chain of the that particular corresponding fuel or resource has to be assured. So the commercial success of a new technology depends on the ready supply chain of its resources on which it will run. And from that viewpoint, the commercial energy and non-commercial energy definition comes. Why we have got almost around 500 meters distance one petrol pump, or rather the oil pump. It can be petrol, diesel pump, etc. Just because that is feasible in the market. The person who takes the dealership of the petrol supply or diesel supply, they can also have enough sale and profit. So getting a petrol or rather the oil pump dealership is a very, I mean, people consider themselves to be lucky because it's a assured business for profit making. And there are a lot of corruptions for that. Corruption is a different issue. It's not the part of the subject, at least for our course. So see about the, I mean, the why the commercial and non-commercial energy issue comes into the picture. If some form of energy has got a regular assured use and required supply, then the supply chain is a very important term in industry, because you cannot just establish an industry where the entire supply chain is not assured. For making a car, you need to be very much assured. When you find out a particular location for car manufacturing, you need to know what are the resources you need. That may be different metal, that may be different fuel input, that may be electricity. So at that particular location, you have to be assured that those supply chain of raw materials and input, both in the form of material and in the form of energy, must be available at affordable and business cost. So this is called the supply chain. Now the issue is the commercial and non-commercial energy definition comes from that viewpoint, whether a energy form can be called as a commercial energy form or non-commercial energy form. Before giving the text, I'm just trying to explain it. For example, all of you know that the biomass, okay, agricultural waste, for example,
it in Delhi, northern India. It's a serious problem in our country that whenever there is after the crop residue is burned on the field itself in Haryana and Punjab, where a lot of agricultural residues are produced. And unfortunately, the airflow carries that particular smoke and dust to the capital city. If it would have been some other place, people would not bother. That's the social structure. Because in Delhi, being affected, people are so much cautious about that particular agricultural residue burning. Now, what is happening then? So people started thinking how we can address this problem. One problem is so that this will not be generated. That's not possible. Then you have to stop your agricultural production. Another option is you can have some mitigate something. And in fact, if you remember 2 3 years back, Supreme Court or Delhi High Court, I forget, most probably Delhi High Court or Supreme Court even, they have ordered just to sprinkle water in main points of the city. I mean, it's a regulatory compulsion for those municipalities to do those things, and it's a costly issue. From tallest building, they have to sprinkle water. And few days back, you know that there was Twin Tower was just destroyed due to some, I mean, rather illegal aspect, and it's a court verdict. Court verdict, Supreme Court's verdict. Everybody has to accept, no option, whatever problem it might be. And you know that the dispersions of those dust and everything has to be quickly settled as far as possible by sprinkling water. Why I'm giving these examples is that agricultural waste is a nuisance if you burn it on the field itself. Best options of these, I mean, reducing this particular nuisance is convert the waste into wealth. Means if you can make it, if you can convert it into some form of useful energy. Agricultural waste has also got some calorific value, though much lower than the so-called conventional fuels like coal, oils, etc. But if you can make some co-firing mode, co-firing means base fuel maybe coal. If you can mix the agricultural waste with coal, then what will happen? Your entire calorific value of the coal agricultural waste mixture will be some percentage higher than the only coal. Advantage? Not with respect to energy or other the so-called thermodynamics. But the advantage is one of your waste, which was creating problem to the environment, will be used in the power plants so that the supply chain will be automatically generated. The farmers will get price out of its waste. So this has become a useful product. One very big example, just in the storytelling mode, I want to tell you that the power plant, the coal produces a lot of ash. And ash was a very big problem because ash deposition was done previously around the power plant, and that has no market value or market use, only except depositing ash for some land filling purpose. Means say a highway is being made, there the people would just, highways are always made a little bit above the surrounding agricultural lands, so you have to raise that particular zone of highway a little bit higher than the local agricultural lands, just to avoid the water logging etc during rainy season. So the only use of that ash that time was for this particular purpose. So the power plant authority has the responsibility to dispose of by paying money to the people. But there was a lot of investment in Indian DST, I know, and mostly civil engineers did that particular miracle. They have converted with their technology innovations, they have made very good quality bricks from ash. Now, ash is not on well or waste; it's on wealth. So obviously, the ash is being sold from coal-based power plants. Not it is their responsibility. People are buying it from them with giving some price. What will be the price? That will be the market-driven price. Similarly, the agricultural waste, already in BIS committee, I myself also one of the members, actually, we are trying to make it what are the specifications of how it can be mixed with coal, because government has already announced actual some percentage, I don't remember, most probably 5% to 10% of agricultural waste has to be mixed with the coal. Then the interesting part is you have to make the supply chain now. Supply chain means not only agricultural waste is not that mixing with the coal in the form of coal pulverized, means coal is pulverized, so in the form of powder. You cannot make that agricultural waste into that powder form at all, because their composition is different. So obviously what you can do, you have to have some other form of making those in the form of called pellets and briquettes, so that those pellets and briquettes, whenever mixed at a suitable point as decided by the technology, can be co-fired, means with coal they will also get burnt and producing more energy. What is the essence of my this long talk is, commercial and non-commercial energies are those, in some cases, just before this government's order and the associated formations of the briquettes and pellets, agricultural waste was not at all a commercial product. It's a burden. Similarly, ash previously was not a commercial product. It's a liability of the power plant. It was. But if you can adapt technology to make those things useful with commercially viable price available in the market, automatically the supply chain will be created for those waste, so that it can be utilized and it can be converted into a commercial energy form. Here comes the interesting part. So obviously the definition of commercial and non-commercial energy are coming from the market value and associated supply chain. So now come to the text writing part, because the any queries up to this, could you understand the issue? Then I have to give some text. Okay, let me give the text, and then if you have queries, I can answer. So just write down: energy resources may be of widely varying type, may be of widely varying type based on its price in the market. Full stop. For energy resources with matured technology to be used, market demand is automatically created for those. And associated supply chain associated supply chain for regular supply in the market is established. Regular supply in the market is established. Go to the next paragraph. Commercial energy or energy resources, commercial energy or energy resources are those for which definite matured technology, for which definite matured technology to use those is available and hence supply chain, SUPPLOI, supply chain of commercial energy is well defined with market, MARKET, market hyphen driven, market driven price. So look into the features how I am defining it. Why which form of energy or energy resources we will call it commercial energy, which has got its technology already matured for use. Otherwise, there is no demand. Unless the cars are there, petrol and diesels are completely useless thing. What you will do with petrol and diesel if the cars are not there? So, if the suitable technology for that particular energy resource is available, automatically there will be a demand created in the market. And if the demand created in the market, automatically there will be a market driven price. Market driven price is very much important because, as you know, that the petrol and diesel, one of the most important crisis in Indian with respect to the Indian economy, depends on, because we have got very little natural resources as the oil, and almost more than 90% of the total oil we have to import from outside, and that's why we are very much vulnerable and we have energy insecure in the transport sector. And might be you must know that that's why government of India has got a strong plan for converting the entire transport system into e-mobility or electric mobility. Because if we can convert into a battery driven mobility system, then electricity generation will be our responsibility, but we will not depend on the oil. And globally also people are switching over to e-mobility just because the oil reserve out of the three main fossil fuels has got so less that within next 30 years, that means you are the young students, you in your lifespan, maybe I will not see it, but you will see it, that oil is completely exhausted globally. So unless you plan it from right at this moment, you cannot just depend in the transport system to run on oil after 30 to 50, 30 to 40 years. In fact, we will define that R by P ratio, reserve by productions, what are the means, I mean, what does it mean, etc. will come later. But oil being the least amount of reserve out of the three possible more main forms of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, you have to have some alternative technology developed for transport sector. But till date, undoubtedly, the oil-driven transport system is the global majority, and it's continuously switching because now entire energy world globally is changing fast. That's why the subject energy is so important. So obviously, from that viewpoint, you can find out that the petrol diesel still is a very important commercial energy, and that's why you have to be, even politically you have to be defensive to get your oil supply. And we will see that the original subject of energy conservation originated from political issue of war between Arab countries and the Israel. And in 1973, the Ramadan War was the responsible for the entire world to realize that energy conservation is necessary. So technology has got very much relation with the social issues. Anyway, so whatever you have now understood, that what is commercial energy. Now let me define more precisely what is non-commercial energy. In commercial energy, there are two main characteristics. One is the technology to use that particular energy or energy resource is matured, and second is it has I must say the three issues. Second is that's why it has got a supply chain, very good supply chain, because now you get the petrol, diesel just within 500 meters, less than 500 meters, any petrol pump is available because it has got the demand. And third is it must have a market driven price. This is a very important term. because anything which is loosely sold in the market, then doesn't have any market driven price, that people just go on selling at any arbitrary price. Here it cannot be, because you know that the price has to be controlled by the government centrally. The petrol diesel price is a very big political issue. So commercial energies has got three characteristics: it has got suitable technology to use it, number two, supply chain assured, and number three, market driven price. Now coming to non-commercial, obviously these three will not have at all. So what is the non-commercial energy? But still it's an energy form. For example, you know that the poor people in forest in India still use for their cooking purpose just firewoods available locally. আমরা যেটাকে জঙ্গল থেকে কাঠ কুড়োনো বলি বাংলায়. So those people, their livelihood is completely depending on collecting those firewoods for their cooking purpose. It's a form of energy, but it's a non-commercial form of energy because it doesn't have any market price. But still, there are some local exchange of those things, not always in exchange of money, because they are too poor people. But maybe some people is giving some firewood to one person, and he or she is bringing those firewood from the forest, and then in exchange maybe he or she is getting some form of drinking water. So these traditional non-money exchange things are there for some of these energy forms. So these are not so-called market-driven price, assured supply chain, and the associated technology is also very crude, not an established technology for using these efficiently. So come to the definition, next paragraph. Non-commercial energy within bracket or resources are those traditional ones, those traditional ONES, those traditional ones which have neither mature technology to use and hence no assured supply chain and assured market driven price. Firewood, FIREWOOD, firewood or cow dung cake, ঘুঁটে বাংলায় যেটাকে বলে, cow dung cake, CAKE, used for cooking by poor rural people are examples of non-commercial energies. Now I have a question. We have understood clearly what is commercial energy, what is non-commercial energy. The question is, can a commercial energy over a period get converted into non-commercial energy? Or can a vice versa, non-commercial energy can be converted later on in the form of a commercial energy? Just apply your imagination, because this subject is interestingly, a lot of options are there, because nothing is defined, everything definitions we can make it. So commercial and non-commercial mutual exchange is possible or not?
Sir,
বলো, explain a little bit.
non-commercial can be converted into commercial, but vice versa is not true.
So non-commercial energy can be converted into commercial energy sometime. Okay, that's your answer.
Yes,
But the reverse is not possible. Is it your answer?
yes, sir.
What is your name?
Mohan, sir.
Mohan. You are from which department?
Construction engineering.
Good. Someone else want to respond to this question? Then I will come to the discussion.
স্যার আই থিঙ্ক স্যার পসিবল বিকজ স্যার ওয়েল মানে যখন স্যার আমাদের পেট্রোল ডিজেল যদি শেষ হয়ে যায় তাহলে তখন তো সেই জিনিসটা আর আমাদের কমার্শিয়াল থাকবে না।
Good. We plus speak it in English as far as possible, because in the class I try to speak as much as possible in English. Okay, so you are suggesting that a commercial form of energy, if its use is no longer there, so it will automatically get converted into non-commercial. That's your answer, response, is it?
Yes, sir, yes.
Yes. Anybody else? Yeah, I think during the discussions you have understood that either way is possible. And there, the interesting part is, the economy. Economy means what? What you are studying in energy conservation, that very much related to the commercial issues or financial issues or money issue. You know that the Arabian countries, which are basically, we generally call it, they are floating on oils because they have large oil reserves. Unfortunately, coal is to some extent distributed over the world in many countries, geographical location. These are created over long period, through the geological processes. You have an idea. But unfortunately, due to some reasons, oil is concentrated into very few local zones of the global map. And those who are lucky to get their oils in their own country, they are becoming much rich just by exporting that oil. Arabian countries people have got very rich living standard currently at this moment, and they have a lot of money. But that economy is called resource driven economy. Means they are rich just because they have the resource. Another example of economy is the Israel. Nobody can deny. Very small country, land area very small, almost very much limited natural resources. Still they are excelling and dominating over the world as a very dominating power, not like US, but they are also very strong dominating power, just because of their knowledge development through R&D. More than 60% of the people of Israel are involved in R&D process. And they are globally known for their excellent technology development. This type of economy is called knowledge economy. Means one economy is resource driven economy, another is the knowledge economy. India, our prime minister is a lot of time at giving that particular reference of, we have to convert to the knowledge economy. Knowledge economy concept is, you have your brain power to innovate, to find out, and that's why the innovation has become so much important, at least in Indian context also. At least our government, national government, is promoting the innovation, startup, all these issues. So the concept is, if you have a resource-based economy, your resource is limited, means you are gone when your resource is gone. And that will absolutely happen to the Arabian countries. They are neither interested in education, innovations. They simply export oil and earn a lot of money and have a very, lavish lifestyle. And eventually, within the next 50 years, they will be the poorest of the poor economy people, because they have no knowledge power and their resources are also exhausted. The commercial energy and non-commercial energy concept comes from that particular issue, that unless you can get these things one converted into another, this is a question of time. As rightly told by the second student, I don't remember I didn't ask his name anyway. You are from which department? The second person who responded, student?
Chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering. Good. What's your name?
Sarubab Shah.
Okay, good. So our second friend who has responded has rightly responded that when the use of that commercial energy is no longer existing, then obviously it's a useless thing. What you will do if your entire mobility is converted to electric mobility, rather a battery driven car? I know, because my collaboration is with Norway. and they have decided after 2024 they will not produce any other new petrol or rather diesel driven car. They will not manufacture, they will simply stop it. They have switched over to the government has to make according to the policy, because you cannot tell tomorrow that nobody use your petrol or diesel cars. It is not possible, because then the people have already invested their money to buy those things. So you have to have a very long term policy planning, 20 years framework, like that the cars are also not possible to run on the roads if they are most probably currently that term is 15 years term. After 15 years, those cars cannot be used on the road. Just because you have your car and that moves, that's not, you cannot be allowed, because these are highly pollutant. I mean, it creates large amount of pollutants. Similarly, here the question is, those commercial energy and non-commercial energy definitions are, one can get converted into another due to different circumstances. And on the other hand, the non-commercial energy example, that one of the example of fire roots, these are crudely used in method of direct burning with a lot of pollution generated. But currently, a lot of investment, specifically from the chemical engineering department people, are there in the gasification process, where the solid biomass can be converted. Mechanical also contribute, power engineering department also contribute to that area. But basically, this is on the basis of identifying proper chemical reaction in substoichiometric air, means you will not provide sufficient oxygen. So a synthetic fuel gas will be generated, which will have the calorific value, and that produced gas can be used very efficiently into very highly efficient combined power cycles. So obviously, this then, if the entire technology is fully developed, means like previously, like ash of power plant, the fire roots of the forest will become a commercial product. So in between, the conversion of one to another is pretty possible, depending on the technology level and the orientations of the people and government incentives. Just write down mutual conversion. Next paragraph, mutual conversion between commercial and non-commercial energies is always is possible over time. Is possible over time. With new technology development, and global regulation, global stroke local দুটোই হতে পারে, global stroke local regulation, some of the commercial energy forms may not be useful and simply becomes non-commercial energy over time. Full stop. On the other hand, with environmental constraint, some new energy resources may be useful with new technology development to be future commercial energy, though those were initially non-commercial energy. So mutual conversion between commercial and non-commercial energies are possible over time. Okay, so you have understood. Then the last one, we have around 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. Renewable and non-renewable, I don't need to discuss much because all of you know. But still, I just have to make the formal definitions as a part of your class note. What is renewable energy? All of you use this term very frequently, but what should be the definition of renewable energy? Any response? No response, but we frequently use the term renewable, non-renewable. Maybe someone is
the
actually,
energy that can be renewable
that means A is,
can be
that is A.
replaced.
What is the energy that can be renewable is renewable energy is not a definition, right? So the letter A is the letter which is A. And any other response? What do you mean by renewable? Then only you can get your definition. So don't use the term renewable, but make the explanations meaning of the renewable itself. Then the definition is done. Renewable means that's not exhaustible. You can continuously get it back. And now think of continuously get it back the concept if you want to make it. Then also it's really impossible. We are in a class, we are in the city of Kolkata, we are in Jadavpur University class now, we are not concerned much beyond that. But the entire solar system and beyond that is working. Someday the sun may not be there. Then our existence of this earth and other planets are not at all defined. What will happen to those? So obviously our majority of the renewable energy sources are coming from sun, but some are from the earth itself, like geothermal, etc. So from considering that arbitrary debate whether these are really inexhaustible or not, that's a meaningless issue, because when sun goes, then we need not to think of any other science, technology, anything. We are gone. So just the definition, just write down: renewable energy within bracket or resources are those which are virtually inexhaustible, which are, I'm telling virtually, which are virtually inexhaustible, INEXHAUSTIBLE. Most of the renewable energy forms are from sun, a few from only earth, some are combination of both. Okay, then full stop. Non-renewable resources, non-renewable energy or resources are those which have limited reserve and will definitely be exhausted after some time. I'm not going to give any example, all of you know it. So obviously, the definition of renewable and non-renewable means that can be renewed. Renewed means obviously virtually inexhaustible. You can regenerate, re-availability can be made. And the re-availability, you are not doing anything. Nature is doing. Wind will blow, and sunshine will be there as the sun rises in the sky. There will be some biomass resources automatically generated from the natural processes of living process, either plant or animals. So these are all renewable resources, and they are virtually inexhaustible till the entire solar system is existing. We will have it. So theoretically, it is virtually, but realistically or practically, it is inexhaustible, because when sun is not there, solar system is getting destroyed. We need not to think of anything. Our force requirement is also gone, not required. Anyway, and the last term is just I'm giving it as a data. In several energy calculations or process or data reporting, you will find out it's not the conventional kilowatt is used, because as you understand that it is as like you use the micron in the measurement of the so-called nano meter, etc., in the measurement of the molecular level, but you don't use the distance between Delhi and India in microns. It's not possible. So obviously, depending on the, the quantity or magnitude, the unit has to be also adjusted. With respect to national planning or etc., energy planning, the energy consumption unit or energy supply unit should be so large that it should be a reasonable value. So that's the ton of oil equivalent. It's a defined larger unit of energy. So 1 into 10 to the power 7 kilocalorie, that effectively comes out to be 11630 or 41868 megajoule. I don't remember it, but you have to remember it, because this is a big unit of the energy that is discussed in the terms of energy planning, where the large amount of energy has to be used. So up to this, any queries? Otherwise, I'm coming out of the presentation part and there will be a roll call now. I can keep it, then I can go for the roll call part. Who is, by the way, what was the last class? What was the last class date? I forgot it. Most probably it was Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Saturday means what was the date then? 5th was Monday, 4th Sunday. That means 3rd September. Okay. 3rd 9, and today is 10th 9, no? Okay. So we are starting with chemical engineering students. Muhammad Ali, absent. Anyway, today absent, maybe the earlier class also. And then Diptendu Gupto.
Present, sir.
Okay. You are present in last class also?
Sir, for some part of the class, not full class.
Not last class, no?
Not full class, some part of the class.
Okay, I can assure rather, I can assume your honesty, or rather, I thank that you have tell the fact. By the way, can you make one thing? Every day, can you just send someone the attendance list so that I need not attendance. I hate to take attendance, but I have to take, because a lot of issues come up later. Let me take today at least anyway. Shaunak Agrawal. Shaunak is here? No? No. I don't know what about him earlier class. Anubhav Shaha.
Present, sir.
Orunabo Mikey is trying to join in the class now. I don't know why. Anyway. অরুণাবু আছো তাই তো? কতদিনের ছিলে?
No, sir.
কতদিন ছিলে না? Good. This is the good approach. Then Gitan Dash. Gitan. No.
Present, sir.
ও গীতান আছো, কতদিন ছিলে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
আচ্ছা, গুড। Then বৈভব আগরওয়াল. বৈভব আগরওয়াল. No. আমি তো বুঝতে পারছি না একজন কেন এখন জয়েন করতে চাইছে, যাকে চাইছে চাক, ওর মতো চাক। এখনো 9:30